Can't believe I'm actually saying this. We have Knitting Cult Lady. Cult of CrossFit, the deaths and the labor trafficking. She made 2 videos recently. This one is 3 days ago. I'm playing it through my earphones right now so I can respond to it.
About the Cult of CrossFit. 2 things that we often see when we are analyzing groups, wondering if they have become essentially cults, is unalivings, either by accident or by self-choice, and the trafficking of labor, both of which we are seeing here.
Unalivings and the trafficking of labor, both of which we are seeing here in CrossFit. We'll get to that in a second.
Here in the CrossFit case. So CrossFit has always been very guilty of relying on volunteer labor. And by the way, it is illegal for corporations to accept volunteer labor in the United States. This is because we have a basic understanding that when you have somebody's labor, it is very easy to exploit them.
Okay, I don't disagree that when you have somebody's labor, it's very easy to exploit them if they're an employee that you're requiring to do volunteer work. You can do a Google search, which I didn't even have to do, and anybody who knows anything about anything knows that the laws against volunteer labor have nothing to do with corporations not being able to use volunteer labor. And I think you know this too. There's been many cases that have confirmed that corporations can use volunteer labor. It's confirmed on the basis of whether or not there's an expectation of payment. So if CrossFit were using volunteers who expected to be paid, or they had people coming in and saying, hey, we're going to pay you this much, and then they didn't pay them, they would be guilty. If a corporation had a private corporation had employees and they started saying, hey, we want you to do this volunteer thing after hours, 1 hour every Tuesday, and then they kept ramping it up, yes, it'd be easy to exploit people. Why? Because you have their livelihood, their employment being hung over their head. Oh, if I don't volunteer these other hours, I won't get paid for my actual hours. This is very obvious. It's not illegal whatsoever to have volunteers for a private corporation in the United States of America. That is not just the law, it's supported by case law. There's been cases from, I think the AFI Film Institute, one of the film festivals or institutes has used volunteer labor for their festivals, which is a very appropriate case, and it was deemed that it actually was not going against volunteer labor laws because they had no expectation of payment. Another case is near my old house in Ohio, the Cathedral Buffet. That place probably actually was a cult. So, but at the Cathedral Buffet, the restaurant, church members would volunteer their services. It was a profitable restaurant. And in that case, the same thing. There was no expectation of payment. Therefore, they were not going against labor laws. You are wrong. This is false. You should issue a correction.
Of course. And then the larger events are mostly staffed by volunteers to insulate them from liability because they're not staff or contract.
That is incorrect completely about the law. It does not insulate you from liability to have volunteers. The volunteer themselves is insulated from liability. So if you are volunteering for a corporation under labor laws, if something happens, that volunteer is insulated from being litigated against. The corporation is not. If you do something wrong and you're volunteering for CrossFit, CrossFit can get sued to the high heavens. This is completely false. You use it as a statement in order to support the premise that you have, but your premise is completely wrong, and so are your so-called facts.
They also, I believe, did a swim after a run, and this is the exact opposite of what triathlons do because it's bonkers to put people in the water when they're already physically exhausted. The swim should always come first for safety reasons.
The swim should always come first for safety reasons. You say that so confidently. What are your sources for that? You mentioned triathlons. Well, I did a little search on those numbers, and there's varying different numbers, but basically triathlons have had like 130 deaths in the last 10 years. 130. Now, if you look at Ironman, there's been like 170 or something since 1986. You're making this whole video and you prop up triathlons, I believe multiple times, maybe twice, at least once. and they have had 130 deaths. Did you make a video talking about how they're a cult for each one of those deaths, or no? I'd like to point out that stuff happens all the time at marathons, at triathlons, at Ironmans, at basketball games, at football games. All of these sports have had multiple deaths.
This is one of these signs when we're looking at groups thinking, are they really a cult? It's just the massive disregard for individuals' lives.
The massive disregard for individual lives. What are you talking about? The massive disregard for the life, the one life that I was there, by the way. I saw it. I saw the whole thing. I was at the lake. The one death, is that what you're talking about? There are thousands of affiliates with people who go to CrossFit every day. People who are getting healthier. I don't have to say this is a fact. You know this. You were a part of CrossFit. People get healthier, although I'm not sure what kind of CrossFit you went to, because later on you're going to talk about all the skinny white women. And I don't, have you seen the women at the CrossFit Games, or in general, the women as they progress in CrossFit? They're not skinny women. They get very large and muscular. So I don't know if you went for like a few months and you had a bad experience or what, but here's the thing. The massive disregard for individual lives. You know who makes exaggerated statements like that? Cults. That's who makes exaggerated statements like that.
That there is no limit to what the cult will let you sacrifice for them, as was made very, very obvious in the case of CrossFit.
There is no limit to what the cult will let you sacrifice for them, as was made very obvious in the case of CrossFit. What on earth are you talking about? Who willingly sacrificed themselves for CrossFit? Your logic here is saying that somebody said, I'll go out there and drown. Oh, I worship you, CrossFit cult, take my life. That's not what happened. Nobody's going to disagree with you about a poorly run event. You talk about people being, one track mind, everybody just going along with the leader. Have you been in the CrossFit space or seen what's going on at all? It's not like that at all. People are absolutely eviscerating CrossFit right now and CrossFit headquarters. There's nobody who isn't upset about that situation whatsoever. There's not this. And CrossFit themselves hasn't said anything. They haven't come out and said, you need to support us, you need to sacrifice. Sacrifice what? What are you talking about? Nothing was sacrificed. Somebody lost their life at a poorly equipped event. That's what happened. And you're right about that. It was poorly equipped, but it was a mistake and a tragedy. Nobody sacrificed anything. Answer me this question. What are they asking us to sacrifice? You say there's no limits into what they'll ask you to sacrifice. What are you talking about? For 99.9% of us who don't even know the name of a games athlete, we just go to the gym and pay a normal monthly gym membership that we can revoke at any time. I don't even think you know how it works. Do you know how they get their money or how the games are run? One of the reasons why this probably happened is because they cut from the budget for the games. So do you know why that is? It's because the games aren't very profitable. And CrossFit as an organization makes $100 million in revenue. That doesn't say anything to profit, but it seems like you have a basic misunderstanding of how the CrossFit business works in general. Their money isn't made off the games. Their money is made off affiliates. And I know you get into this whole multi-level marketing thing that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, because affiliates are paying $4,000 a year, I believe that's the number, in order to use the CrossFit name and some other things. It's no different than a franchise. So unless you're calling all franchises cults, then this again makes absolutely no sense. If you are calling all franchises cults, if you're saying McDonald's is a cult and blah, 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 then nobody should listen to you anyway. And this whole rebuttal is absolutely pointless.
This isn't going to be enough to shut it down. It's going to continue on being the cultic, individual destroying organization that it is.
It's going to continue to be the cultic, individual destroying organization that it is. I'm about helping individuals. Well, why don't you help this? Can you help me go down from 250 pounds to 175 pounds and have my blood pressure go from like 170 over 110 to gosh, what is it, like 100 over, is that right? 100 over 70 or whatnot. Can you do that? Because it's not just me, it's a heck of a lot of other people. And that's not saying praise CrossFit, oh, Greg Glassman. I wasn't even here when Greg Glassman was around. The reason why CrossFit works really well is because it always keeps you stimulated because of its variation in what you're doing. It's not just going to the gym every day, doing bench press, deadlift, squat, etc. That's why it's able to stimulate me. That's why I was able to lose weight. That's why I was able to get healthy. So why don't you cite, other than the tragedy, please cite the examples of CrossFit being an individual destroying organization.
Is keep an eye on how much labor you are giving to organizations. Honestly, I don't think you should ever dedicate your life to anything, anyone.
Keep an eye on how much labor. See, your whole premise is that cults are built around free labor, and basically, CrossFit Games is once a year. Sorry. The whole argument makes no sense. People volunteer for the CrossFit Games one time per year. They volunteer and they go and they give some of their time, and then in return, they get some t-shirts, they get to watch some of the games. It's the same thing for the PGA Tour and golf, and it's legal. So it would be one thing if you were talking about a weekly, daily, monthly, whatever thing where people, when you talk about how much time you're dedicating, you're talking about once a year. So this is completely asinine. Makes no sense.